Anyone who looks into a German kitchen today will almost always see the same picture. A bottle of sunflower oil or rapeseed oil stands within easy reach next to the stove. Hardly anyone thinks about how these oils have become such a matter of course. But the path to this point was long, and it didn't begin the way you might think. Rapeseed oil was originally not a food product. As early as the 16th century, rapeseed was cultivated in northern Germany. However, it wasn't used for cooking, but rather to fuel lamps and lubricate machines. The smell, the bitter substances, and the high content of erucic acid made the oil unsuitable for consumption. It was only many centuries later that breeders succeeded in developing varieties suitable for nutrition. In the 1970s, so-called zero-erucic acid rapeseed varieties were developed, which were free from the problematic fatty acids. They paved the way for the rise of rapeseed oil in German kitchens. Sunflower oil, on the other hand, was an imported product. In Ukraine and Russia, it had already been the most important cooking oil since the 19th century. It first reached Central Europe in small quantities via trade routes. It was only in the 1990s that it became established in Germany, at a time when animal fats were increasingly falling into disrepute. Margarine advertising, cholesterol-free promises, and the growing trend toward plant-based diets paved the way for a new generation of cooking oils that were considered lighter and healthier. Politics and business worked closely together in this regard. As part of European agricultural policy and national energy programs in the 1990s, the cultivation of rapeseed was massively promoted. It fit perfectly into the image of a modern, sustainable agriculture, local, efficient, and versatile in its uses. Rapeseed oil was used not only for cooking but also as a raw material for biodiesel, lubricants, and technical fats. This made it economically attractive and led to Germany becoming one of the largest producers of rapeseed oil in Europe within just a few decades. This success was therefore no coincidence, but rather the result of targeted political and economic decisions. While lard and butter still dominated kitchens in the 1960s, the picture changed fundamentally within a single generation. At the beginning of the 2000s, the annual per capita consumption of vegetable oils in Germany was around 18 liters, and the trend was rising. Since then, rapeseed oil has been one of the most commonly used cooking oils, closely followed by sunflower oil. The food industry quickly recognized the potential. Refined seed oils could be produced cheaply and in large quantities. They were tasteless, colorless, and could be used universally, from salad dressings to frozen pizza to baby food. Their neutrality made them the perfect standard oil for mass production. But this success came at a price. To produce seed oils in such quantities, production processes had to become ever more efficient and ever more aggressive. A natural plant became an industrial product. This is where the real question begins. If the production is so complex and technical, how natural can such an oil really be? Anyone entering a modern oil refinery does not find themselves among golden fields, but in a world of steel, steam, and pipes. It smells of heat, metal, and labor, not of sunflowers. This is where what innocently sits on supermarket shelves as vegetable oil is actually produced. The process begins with the seeds. Rapeseed, sunflower, or soybeans are harvested in large quantities, cleaned, dried, and stored. Only a small portion of these seeds is actually pressed. The vast majority, about 4/5, undergoes a chemical process, extraction with hexane, a volatile solvent derived from petroleum processing. This hexane dissolves the fat from the crushed seeds and is then removed again by heating. By law, only tiny traces are allowed to remain in the final product. But this step shows just how far the final product is from its natural original form. The crude oil obtained in this way is initially unattractive, dark, viscous, and with an intense odor. It contains waxes, mucilaginous substances, free fatty acids, and traces of pesticides. Not a product anyone would willingly eat. That's why it is purified in several steps at the refineries. During degumming, phospholipids and protein residues are removed using hot water or acids. Next comes neutralization, where free fatty acids are neutralized with caustic soda. After that, the oil is bleached. It passes over activated clay or bleaching earth to bind dyes and metal residues. Finally comes deodorization, the crucial step. In this process, the oil is heated to up to 240 degrees Celsius and treated with steam. Odor and flavor compounds are driven out until only a neutral, light-colored and odorless product remains. This process makes the oil standardizable. It always looks the same, tastes like nothing, and keeps for months. That's exactly what the industry needs: a predictable, stable, cheaply produced oil. But what does this mean for the quality of the oil itself? What traces does the heat leave behind? What are the consequences of the chemical treatment? When the oil leaves the refinery, it looks perfect. But the price of this perfection lies within. At every stage of refining, substances that were originally part of the plant have been removed: antioxidants, vitamins, and secondary plant compounds. Vitamin E is particularly affected, one of the most important natural defense systems against oxidation. After bleaching and deodorizing, only a fraction of it remains. Along with the vitamin, many of the oil's natural defense substances also disappear. As a result, it becomes more susceptible to oxidation, that is, those chemical processes in which fatty acids react with oxygen and form unstable molecules. Even during refining, small amounts of aldehydes, ketones, and polymers of oxidized lipids are formed, compounds that do not occur naturally in this form. When heated to up to 240 degrees, the structures of polyunsaturated fatty acids also change. A small portion is converted into trans fatty acids, a proportion that remains below 1% but is not biochemically insignificant. Other molecules, such as 4-hydroxynonenal, can form when sensitive fatty acids react with oxygen. These substances are chemically reactive and can intensify oxidative processes in the body. The amounts present in the finished oil are small, but they show that the product is no longer a natural oil, but rather a chemically altered mixture that becomes even more unstable with further heating, such as in a pan or deep fryer. Each time the oil is reheated, more breakdown products are formed. Frying oils that are used for hours on end are particularly problematic. In such cases, polar compounds are formed, meaning oxidized and polymerized fatty acids. Although there are legal limits for the food service industry, for example, a maximum content of 24% polar compounds, these regulations are not always strictly followed in practice. Many kitchens use the same oil much longer than recommended due to cost pressures or lack of time. Oversight in this area is inadequate. In private households, on the other hand, no one checks when an oil has reached the end of its usable life. Researchers see this as a possible contributor to oxidative stress, a condition in which free radicals increase in the body. Such processes are associated with a wide range of chronic diseases, from vascular inflammation to metabolic disorders. Even without extreme heat, chemical changes continue to occur, just more slowly. Even during storage, the fatty acids react with air and light. This process continues even in sealed bottles. Outwardly, the oil remains clear and odorless, but internally, its structures change bit by bit. The paradox is that the very oils considered especially light and modern are, from a chemical standpoint, the most unstable. Animal fats like butter or clarified butter burn more quickly but oxidize less intensely. So the apparent purity of refined oil is deceptive. This leads us directly to the next question. If refined oils are so heavily altered, why are they still considered harmless? The trail leads out of the refineries to where science, politics, and industry intersect. For decades, nutrition guides followed a simple formula. Animal fats make you sick, vegetable oils are healthy. This message shaped generations based on the assumption that saturated fatty acids raise cholesterol levels and thus promote heart disease. But modern research shows it's not that simple. The original advantage of vegetable oils was that they lower LDL cholesterol. That is still supported by evidence. But cholesterol levels alone only partially explain heart health. Today we know that inflammation, oxidation processes, and the ratio of different fatty acids also play a role. This is exactly where the contradictions begin. Refined sunflower and soybean oils contain large amounts of linoleic acid, a polyunsaturated omega-6 fatty acid. Linoleic acid is essential for life, but in excess it can disrupt the delicate balance between omega-6 and omega-3. In Western diets, this ratio is often 10 to 1 or even 20 to 1. A ratio of about 5 to 1 is recommended. Epidemiological data are also not clear-cut. In large population studies, people with higher plant oil consumption often fare better. But these studies rarely distinguish between refined and unrefined oils. Vegetable oil is a catch-all term that can refer to biochemically very different products. Some nutrition scientists therefore speak of a gray area in fat research. On the one hand, replacing saturated fatty acids with unsaturated ones is considered positive. On the other hand, more recent data show that too many omega-6 fatty acids and oxidized lipid compounds could be problematic in the long term, especially when they are industrially processed. There is also a structural problem. Nutritional recommendations do not arise in a vacuum. Institutions, industry associations, and research funders are often closely interconnected. As early as the 1990s, the margarine industry supported numerous studies that portrayed unsaturated fats as particularly healthy, even though the products at that time still partly contained trans fats. Today, large agricultural and oil corporations fund studies on the heart-friendliness of their oils. This does not mean that all results are wrong, but it does show how economic interests shape scientific communication. While official bodies continue to recommend replacing animal fats with vegetable oils, independent researchers are calling for more nuanced guidelines. Some refer to refined seed oils as an underestimated source of oxidative stress. Others advocate for stricter limits on heat-induced byproducts and for clear labeling requirements that distinguish between refined and unrefined oils. But in the supermarket, this distinction remains invisible. The labels simply say vegetable oil, a term that means everything and nothing. And while scientists and authorities are still debating, another factor has long determined what we believe and buy: marketing. Because on the labels and in commercials, it's not about fatty acids or oxidation products, but about golden fields, health, and naturalness. On the supermarket shelf, everything looks harmless. Golden yellow oil in clear bottles, labels with sunflowers, words like purely plant-based, from the finest seeds, or rich in vitamin E. The majority of cooking oils sold in Germany are refined. You can hardly tell that from the bottle. Although refined may be indicated, many manufacturers mention it only in small print or not at all. Instead, it says pure vegetable oil, a term that legally only means the product comes from a single fat source. It has nothing to do with naturalness. This is where the misconception begins. Consumers automatically equate plant-based with healthy. This image has been shaped over decades, less by research than by marketing. For consumers, neither the origin nor the method of cultivation is apparent. Nutritional information can also be misleading. Added to this is the practice of blended oils. Many products that advertise sunflowers on the label actually also contain rapeseed or soybean oil, legally permissible as long as the blend is correctly labeled. At first glance, the bottle appears to be pure sunflower oil, but in reality, it is often a blend of vegetable oils that merely gives the impression of purity. But why is this form of marketing even allowed to exist? Because the current EU labeling regulations allow many things, as long as there is no deception in the legal sense. The definitions are clear, but so are the gaps in information. What appears to be transparency on the label is often vague in terms of content. First, we need a realistic understanding of what refined seed oils actually are. They are not natural staple foods, but rather industrially standardized products that primarily serve a technical function. They are neutral in taste, have a long shelf life, are inexpensive, and can be produced in large quantities. They should have the same status in the diet as sugar or white flour. They are permitted but not necessary, and their use should remain moderate. If you want to use fats in cooking that are less sensitive to heat and oxygen, you can turn to oils that are naturally more stable. These include, above all, avocado oil, clarified butter, ghee, or coconut oil. These fats either contain fewer polyunsaturated fatty acids or natural antioxidants that make them more resistant. But changing the oil is only part of the solution. The other part concerns education and transparency. Many terms found on bottles sound healthy but actually say very little. Anyone who wants to shop more consciously needs to learn how to read these codes. If terms like refined, deodorized, or neutral taste appear on the bottle, it is almost always an industrially processed product. The price can also be an indicator. A very cheap oil is rarely produced by traditional methods, but usually comes from large-scale industrial production. Another step is to reduce the hidden consumption of refined oils. They are found in almost all processed foods. Those who cook fresh meals more often automatically have more control over which fats they actually consume. Even small changes in habits, such as making your own salad dressings instead of using industrially produced sauces, can greatly reduce intake. A shift in thinking would also be necessary on a societal level. For decades, dietary recommendations were based almost exclusively on cholesterol levels. In doing so, it was rarely taken into account how highly processed a fat is or how stable it remains under heat. A modern nutrition system would need to place greater emphasis on exactly these aspects because a chemically treated, repeatedly heated oil is not an equivalent substitute for a natural one, regardless of whether it is plant-based or animal-based. Until then, the responsibility remains with the individual. A mindful approach to fats is not about deprivation, but rather a step back toward real flavor, toward foods that are once again what they claim to be: natural. In the end, it comes down to a choice between convenience and awareness, and every meal determines which side we are on.